Hi, everybody. My name is Yiqian Zhang. I am a Sustainable Mobility Officer at EcoLogistics World Secretariat, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today, EcoLogistics, Achieving Low Emission Urban Freight Transport. First and foremost, I hope you, your family, and also your friends are healthy and safe, and thank you very much for spending time with us. We hope the next hour will be an interesting introduction into low emission urban freight in different continents. So before we get started, just a few general housekeeping rules. You are automatically muted, and if you have any questions, you can always submit those in the Q&A panel. And you can also upvote the questions by clicking on the like button, and then the most upvoted questions will be moved to the top of the panel, and then we will address them during our Q&A session. And then secondly, the webinar is being recorded and it will be shared on Daring City's website shortly. So in terms of the lineup today, we have 3 speakers from around the world. Our first speaker will be Robin. He is the urban freight strategist at the traffic planning office at the city of Stockholm. Thank you for being here, Robin.
Thank you for having me.
And our second speaker will be Dr. Dr. Lu, who is the Director General of the Environmental Protection Department of Taoyuan City, and he is also the Deputy CEO of EcoLogistics Community Chair Office, which is Taoyuan. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Lu.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. And our third speaker today will be Sergio Martinez. And Sergio is the Undersecretary of Mobility Policy at the city of Bogota. And due to some technical issues, Sergio can't be here for the moment, but he will be joining us shortly. So our agenda for today will include a short introduction by me, and also then the 3 EcoLogistics successful stories from the city of Stockholm, Bogota, and also Taoyuan. So through the presentation, we'll see how these three daring cities are tackling climate emergency and also addressing urban freight issues through different perspectives, including infrastructure, innovative solutions related to urban freight, and also a wide range of other solutions. So following this, we will also have a Q&A session with the audience. So I will encourage you to also address any questions that you might have in the Q&A panel. Yeah, so a brief intro from everyone knows that globally, freight accounts for 40% of transport-related emissions, and the freight demand is estimated to triple by 2050, and also its associated CO2 emissions will also more than double, according to ITF Transport Outlook. And you can also see on the screen, there's also a wider range of impacts that could be caused by urban freight, including air pollution, noise pollution, road congestion, and also a series of other issues. And also, especially during this time, the COVID-19 crisis also highlighted the importance of logistic operations that brings us goods and also has caused disruptions from for the freight sector. So you can see from Europe to the US, also to China, transport companies are also reporting basically record volumes of traffic. Therefore, sustainable freight is also essential to every aspect of life in a city, especially also in times of crisis. That's why at EcoLogistics, we are putting also a lot of emphasis on EcoLogistics. What does it mean? EcoLogistics, it means it promotes the transportation of goods by giving priority to health, safety, low emission, and people-centered urban environment. And also, more importantly, it encourages circular and regional economies while also limiting the impact of freight transport. So about the initiative, you can find out more on our website, which is sustainablemobility@.ecole.org. And under this initiative, we have currently 2 projects. The first one is the EcoLogistics Community, which is the first global network on sustainable urban logistics. And through the community, we are aiming to build collaborative actions and also to be the global platform in driving sustainable urban logistics in cities. And currently, it is chaired by Taoyuan City. And I believe Dr. Lu later will also introduce a little bit more about the EcoLogistics community. And another project that we currently have is the EcoLogistics Low Carbon Freight for Sustainable Cities project. And it is currently implemented in Argentina, Colombia, and India. And this project focuses on capacitating government and also non-government actors to build also strategies and also policies to promote low carbon and also more sustainable urban freight through local action and also national support. The project is currently implemented by EcoLogistics, supported by EKI, and we are also working with partner organizations in the field of freight, including, as you can see on the screen, Zaragoza Logistics Center, Smart Freight Center, and also Dispatcho. So without further ado, I would like also to hand over to our first speaker, Robin, from the City of Stockholm. So Robin is working as a strategist at the City of Stockholm Transportation Department. He is working to raise the awareness of sustainable freight within the city. And in his work, he regularly interacts with a wide range of stakeholders in developing new solutions to secure accessibility for freight, while also reducing its negative impact on climate and also the local environment. So Robin has previously experienced working with the transportation field for both private and public organizations. Robin, thanks for joining us, and you can start sharing your screen.
Thank you very much. As you just heard, my name is Robin Wilsjö, and I'm a strategist at the City of Stockholm at the Transport Department, and I will give you an idea of how we work, how we tackle freight and logistics within the City of Stockholm, and also give a few examples of concrete projects. First of all, the Transport Department, which I represent, you could summarize our mission in one sentence, saying that we work for an accessible and functioning city 24 hours a day and every day of the year. That basically wraps it up. And of course, we need to do a lot of different things to fulfill this. At the same time, we're seeing the global trend where streets are no longer regarded only as links for movement and for vehicles, but streets are an important part of the public space of cities. And we need to develop street environments for people and for the people living in our cities and visiting and working there, and for develop places where people want to stay. So this is something we have to adapt to as well. I will give you first an idea of how we work with coordination overall with freight related matters, and then give you 3 concrete examples. Working with freight, we have a freight plan called the Stockholm Freight Plan, which is adopted by the City Council. So this is the freight plan that should be followed by all of the city, meaning all companies and departments within the City of Stockholm. It has been developed in close collaboration with private and public stakeholders, and it's available online in English, so I won't dig in any deeper into it, but I can share a link afterwards for you to download it. So we use the freight plan as our platform, and going forward working together. And of course, as you all know, working with freight and logistics, it's very complex with a lot of different actors that has an influence over the development of freight transport. So with this image, we're trying to, from the City of Stockholm perspective, illustrate all the different actors that need to be involved in different kinds of ways. We have also initiated an internal freight work to coordinate the work within the City of Stockholm to secure that we're going in the correct direction. We have also initiated a municipal freight forum, which is exchanging ideas between the larger municipalities and cities of Sweden. And we're also taking part in a lot of different regional and national networks in our everyday stakeholder dialogue. So for the first example, off-peak, as we call it, this is about making better use of the off-peak hours, because this is what we often see, a lot of transport and traffic in the peak hours. And this is a link through central Stockholm. And this is the typical traffic flow distribution of the day in Stockholm. As you can see, we have the infrastructure is much less used during the evenings and nights and early mornings. So the idea is to find solutions to use this better and make use of the infrastructure when it looks like this. And of course, the results would be better accessibility, reduction of travel times and reduction of emissions, etc., and several traffic safety benefits as well, of course. So we have worked together with private stakeholders and the Academy to find solutions, because our biggest issue here, our biggest challenge is noise, because we have a very mixed usage of the city. As you can see here, we have residents living in apartments straight above the McDonald's restaurant showed in this example. So since we have quite severe noise restrictions in Sweden, we need to find solutions that are silent enough to permit loading and unloading in the city and in resident areas during the night. But with electric trucks, this is a plug-in hybrid, as you can see in the example that we introduced within an EU project the other year, and also with the help of new logistics material and which are silent, etc. We have seen that we can find solutions, making it more and more silent, so that we can shift transport from peak to off-peak. We have seen in several evaluations that we have in average travel time reduction of 30%. Going from peak to off-peak, which means much more higher efficiency and higher accuracy of delivery times for the private companies. So this is something we're looking now into, changing our way of regulating transport during the night to permit silent solutions for night deliveries. We're also transporting waste out from the city during the night, which is something that is part of my next example, which is called Älskade stad, or Beloved City. This is a public-private collaboration that we have in Stockholm that was inaugurated in 2017. So it's you can say that it's a last and first mile consolidation collaboration, because what we're doing is that we deliver parcels with small electric vehicles in the city center and the old town, but at the same time, when parcels are delivered to stores and offices, waste and recycling materials such as paper, plastics, etc., is collected and put in the same vehicle. That waste, that recycling material, is then put in underground facilities where it's compacted and then transported out from the city during the night, which means that we reduce a lot of trucks from the streets where we have a lot of people. The city has been part of developing this and making it possible, but there has been no public funding in the operations. So for 3.5 years now, it's been running on strictly commercial grounds, which we are very happy for, because we see this as a very long-term development. So as you can see, it covers the city center of Stockholm and also the old town, the island you see in the southern part. My third example is the urban waterways. As you can see in this image, which covers central inner city of Stockholm and the historical old town, you can see that Stockholm is a city built on water. It's literally, the old town is literally the link between the third largest lake of Sweden and the Baltic Sea. So we have a lot of water in the city, but it seems that the city has forgotten why it's built here, because we're not using the infrastructure that the water constitutes enough. I mean, it's used, but we could be much better using it because we believe that we need to make use of all the infrastructure available in securing availability and sustainable solutions. So one example we've been working with is there is an ongoing subway extension project where we're building new subway lines in central Stockholm and in the outer suburbs. And one working tunnel is placed where you see the circle here, which is opposite to the Royal Palace and right behind the National Gallery of Fine Art. Which means this is a very sensitive historical area with buildings sensitive to vibrations. So we have looked at the possibility of using ships and barges to transport all the aggregates that we need to take out from this location instead of using trucks. Because during 2 years from now, there will be 500,000 tons of aggregates will be transported out from here. So what we could see in our evaluations is that we could, instead of using 45 trucks or more per day, we could use 2 ships per week. And we saw that noise was not an issue. We could find solutions for silent enough solutions. We could also find the cost was more or less the same, but we did see a big decrease in CO2 emissions, 65% lower using ships instead of trucks. And of course, we have on top of that all the benefits for the city and for the people and the tourists moving around in the area of not having a lot of trucks on our streets. That was a quick run through of a few examples from the city of Stockholm. I hope you could follow it, and thank you for having me. And on the link you see below my name here, if you go on that side, it's that site, it's in Swedish, but if you scroll down, you can find our freight plan in English as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. And that was a really interesting look into some great examples of freight in Stockholm. And we can also see that it is really important also for a city to have first a sustainable freight vision, and in line with the vision to create strategies and also targets and action towards clean and efficient freight, like what the city of Stockholm did with the action plan. And also, as you touch upon different solutions, including the off-peak delivery, and also urban waste, and also low emission freight vehicles. Actually, I want to ask if you could also share, for instance, some key success factors for such project implementation. For instance, like 1 or 2 factors that you think is very important in implementing such projects.
I would say that broad collaboration is a key success factor, because we need to have all the perspectives. We need to have the property owner, we need to have the shippers, we need to have the city as a regulator, and the vehicle manufacturers. So we're trying to have a very broad group of people, so we secure all the different perspectives. And also in this time when we're seeing quick shifts with a lot of distance working, less used offices in central cities, and also a very big increase in e-commerce, which this is changing how we use the cities, and we need to develop new ways of working, new business models. So we need to have all the perspectives all together, and I think that the city can play an important role in putting different actors together so that we can challenge ourselves and try to find new ways forward.
Great. Yes, I think you made a very good point, actually, because often when we talk about urban freight issues, we often say it's like very fragmented and it's very complex because of the multiple stakeholders that are involved in the sector, and then to align their vision and also to basically manage the issues related to freight. It's a task with mounting challenges. Okay, thank you very much, Robin. And
thank you.
Yeah, yes. Sergio from Bogota I would like to hand over to Sergio He is the Undersecretary of Mobility Policy at the Secretariat of Mobility in Bogota, and he has 15 years of professional experience working in both also public and private sectors in planning and also engineering projects. In addition to having worked previously as the Director of Transportation and Infrastructure at the Secretariat of Mobility, he has also worked at the USA Air Force, the World Bank, among other organizations. Over to you, Sergio. You may also start to share your presentation.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. Good morning to those in my time zone. Good afternoon to those in Europe and Asia. Let me just share my screen here. All right. Well, thanks for the invitation again. So I'm going to tell you a bit about what we're doing here in Bogota. A bit of context first. Bogota is the capital of Colombia. And we have a bit over 7 million people, and we are the logistics center for the country. You know, we produce almost a third of the GDP, and almost a third of the companies are located in Bogota. And also, when we look at the municipalities around Bogota, what we call, the region, because we don't really have a metropolitan area politically established yet, although we're working on that. We're looking at almost 10 million people, or a bit over 10 million people, and 31% of the GDP. And something that is very important is that we receive over 60% of all the country's imports. So certainly we have a very challenging situation from the point of view of the city administration, right? Because you have the concern of your citizens, but you also need to take care of all the concerns of the freight sector, the transportations, the warehouses, the distributors that have their eyes not necessarily in the citizens of Bogota, but on their product for the whole country. So we're facing some challenges, of course, some that are shared with all the other cities. Reduce negative externalities. In our case, we're not only talking about environmental impacts, but also road safety and congestion. Well, we also need to increase competitivity. And something that is very important to us is that we really need to engage all stakeholders, particularly small and informal carriers. Because what happens is that even though we have, the big companies, the big fleets of organized and newer vehicles, we also have a lot of individual owners of really old trucks, and like I said, because Bogota is the hub of the country, then you have the really small, the owner of a really small vehicle that brings, produce or meat from the other side of the country. And it's very difficult for them at times, or most of the times, to comply with the most stringent regulations that the city wants to impose, right? Especially when we're talking about air quality. And so for that, we've been working hard to try to develop not only restrictions, but also incentives so that we can strengthen the private sector involvement. And of course, I'm sure you're all familiar with this picture from about 6 months ago. All over the world, nobody knew what was happening or what was going to happen. And so on top of all the challenges that we already had, then we had to add uncertainty, right? So some of the things that we've been working, and we think we're working in the right direction, is that about 5 years ago, we created a network of companies and entities so that we in the public sector could interact with the private sector, with academia, with the trade associations, and any type of organization that had any saying on any relationship to the whole logistics process. Right now, we have more than 160 organizations that are continually working, and we use this network especially for learning, for sharing best practices, for promoting co-responsibility among all the sectors that are related to logistics, and especially promote and recognize whatever the companies are doing, that they're doing well. And it has been a really good experience in having business-to-business relationships, business-to-business sharing of best practices, the smaller, the medium-sized companies learning from the bigger ones, and the most innovative companies sharing, their crazy ideas and making them possible, and working with the smaller ones. So in that sense, it has been a success to really encourage that participation. And another thing is that we were able to sign an agreement to make a commitment between all the different parts of the freight sector, you know, the big trade associations, the people that deliver, the small owners of individual vehicles, with all the different levels of authorities, local, regional, and national. And I really like to show this picture because 2 hours before it was taken, the faces show a completely different perspective. It was arguments, there were people fighting, people threatening to leave the room. And in that picture, in the middle, you have the Secretary of Mobility of Bogota and also the Vice Minister of Transportation for the country. So it was a really important negotiation that it was done. And what happened was that Bogota, you know, concerned for the air quality of the city, which at times is not that good, imposed some restrictions on the age of the trucks that were allowed to come to the city. And of course, because like I mentioned before, we are the hub for the whole country, and you have a sector that is, you know, very decentralized with very small owners, with very old trucks, then they were not able to comply with those regulations. And so they went on strike and they started doing blockages on the streets. And so it was a very complicated time, but we succeeded in making this agreement that we all signed to improve the air quality in the city. And basically what we did is that we added a little bit of flexibility to the restrictions that we imposed in exchange for the commitment that they made to renew a lot more of their vehicles and a lot faster, so that, you know, in conjunction, we could still reduce PM emissions and improve their quality, not only for Bogota, but for the region. So what else are we doing right now? Right now, we are really taking a deep look into how do we integrate logistics and freight and everything that's related to this, not only looking at the city, you know, the big city, the country capital, but also all the municipalities around. So we're trying to articulate everything, and especially because the city right now is working on the midterm land use plan, we're really taking a good deep dive into how do we incorporate best practices for freight and logistics into the overall land use plan for the city. So what are we doing? Of course, we're you know, taking a good look, doing a very good diagnosis of what's happening, of what has succeeded and what has failed, and incorporating the region, because of course the small municipalities have very different incentives. Like for example, sometimes a small municipality just decided on its own to ban truck circulation during certain times, which of course, you know, resulted in a domino effect, a cascading effect of issues for the whole region and sometimes for a very good portion of the country. So that's why we're trying to, you know, bring everybody together and plan this from the same site. And also, of course, we're focusing a lot on last mile distribution and even considering developing freight corridors, because we have one street, one avenue, that is actually the main freight corridor for the country. But also because it connects with the small municipalities outside of Bogota, it's a very important point of entrance for buses, you know, for people, and even for cyclists. And so, of course, their, you know, their priorities and their incentives are not always the same. And so we're working hard to try to come up with a, what we're trying to call like a green sustainable freight corridor. Also, we're working, and we've been working for at least 3 years now, in doing different pilots in different areas of the city to promote off-peak deliveries. And basically, what we do is, you know, we go to the field, we look at, take a look in the area, what kind of businesses they have, what times they operate, what are their needs, and we try to come up with ideas and proposals that they agreed to on how do we, you know, flat the curve, so that not everybody is doing deliveries at the same time. And for example, I like this picture because it's in an area where we have a lot of warehouses, warehouses for liquor, for beverage. And if you can read Spanish, what it says is, you know, loading and unloading zone, left lane, odd days, right lane, even days. And what happened is that, you know, so we did the study, we look in the field, what was the best way to do it. But they kept arguing, the merchants on both sides of the street is like, no, 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 put it on my side. No, 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 put it on my side. And so even to that level of detail, we have to come to agreements, but at the time is working. And we have over 140 zones where we're doing things like this. And of course, this is something that it was highlighted even more because of the COVID pandemic. But Bogota has been working even before that in trying to become a 24-hour city. So again, trying to flattening the activities curve, not only in the freight sector, but in general, cultural activities, commercial, education, everything, so that not everybody's on the streets at the same time. Because of course, the physical space is the most value asset that the city has. So we need to make better use of that. And so we're working especially to promote nighttime deliveries, but because in some areas we still have concerns about safety, we're also working on, with the police and with the businesses to see how we can really implement a sustainable program for nighttime deliveries. And of course, Bogota is a bicycle city. Some of you may have heard about, our ciclovia or our extensive network of bike lanes. And so we're also considering the bicycle for last mile distribution, especially electric cargo bikes. What are we doing right now? We're working on developing a pilot. We need to establish some policy guidelines for the vehicles, for where can they circulate, things like that. And especially because we don't want it to just stay as a pilot, we really need to think of how do we scale this up as a program, and how do we attract private sector resources? And, of course, how do we develop best practices so that we can share with other smaller municipalities? Right now, we have 13 companies that are working with us in trying to structure this pilot. And we hope that next month, it'll be kind of like the beginning, and in 2 months, it'll be in full operation. And finally, working towards this EcoLogistics vision, sustainable freight, we really need to strengthen our institutional capacities and the governance at different levels if we want to really mitigate the environmental impacts of urban freight. And with that, we're working on ECLA on developing a low carbon urban logistics action plan that has some axes, some principles. Especially, we want to renew our fleet. We need to develop incentives so that it's not just public money, but we really need to come up with an attractive program to make that kind of like roll on its own. We really need to permeate logistics planning with sustainability principles, which I mentioned before. And we really need to make use of better use of our existing infrastructure and promote capacity building and co-responsibility, because let's say sadly, there's this vision, there is this point of view that a lot of the things that I've been talking about, trying to push the city towards a greener future, it's only the responsibility of the public sector. And so if I'm the owner of a truck, I'm always looking at the city saying, oh, you want me to change my truck? Okay, give me the money. And that's something that we're trying to work on, really, so that everybody understands that it is in the best interest of everybody that is part of the logistics and freight sector to really keep moving towards greener urban freight. Because at the end, it's we have many stakeholders, and unless we work together, and unless we have a commonly agreed vision of improving efficiency, road safety, and reducing environmental impacts, then we're probably not gonna move very far along on that road. And now that we have not only the climate crisis, but also a public health crisis, we really need to increase uncertainty. Like I said before, we really need to be more flexible. And the only way we can do that is collectively. So that's what we're trying to do. Thank you very much. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank you very much, Sergio. I think it's really particularly interesting also from a Latin American perspective to see urban freight. And also it's super exciting to see how Bogota has implemented such a wide range of innovative solutions, as you touch upon, especially the Incalca Alliance Network, and also loading and unloading zones of our deliveries. So many solutions. And I'm also really impressed also by the impact that you showed earlier related to, for instance, reduced noise cancellation, reduced air pollution, and also improved the road safety. and other related issues. So actually, based on your experience, I was wondering also in terms of sustainable urban freight solutions and examples, do you see some type of measures that are probably easier to implement or more successful in the Latin American context that might be easier to be scaled up or replicated in the Latin American context? Could you probably give some examples?
Yeah, we believe a lot into trying to turn problems into opportunities. And to be honest, governance in Latin America, it's a lot more fragile, right? That, for example, in Europe, in the United States, where they have been developing for decades now, very solid, very well-supported programs for how to make important decisions. Like, for example, in the United States, you have the NEPA process, right? So it's very well-defined. What do you need to do? Who do you need to talk to? How do you advance from one phase to another? And that's something that we like to have. But sadly, like I said, our governments are, let's say they move a lot more with the wind, right? Every time there's a change of government, there's a swift change in perspectives, and a lot of times things that were being worked on, then they stop moving. And so while that is, bad, it's also good if you really try to make that into an opportunity. And if you can, make the city at different levels come with certain type of agreements into a commonly agreed vision, I guess, and you define certain principles, then you can just embrace everything and everybody towards moving to the same place. And the point I was trying to make is that we can make things happen a lot faster, right? So I mentioned a lot of pilots, right? That's because we can move a lot faster, because we have also, not only, I'm not talking about the person, I'm talking about the figure. We have a strong mayor. So when the mayor here talks, everybody moves, right? And so if we have a mayor that it has a defined vision and knows what it wants, or at least is open to allows the entities like us at the Secretary of Mobility to propose new ideas all the time, and it's behind us and give us support, then we can try a lot of things really fast. And that's, for example, just to close this point, that's what happened at the beginning of the pandemic, right? We didn't know what was happening. We didn't know what was going to happen. And the message that we got from the mayor and the message that we got from the Secretary of Mobility is, it's okay to make mistakes. We just need to define what we want, have some metrics, measure, and if we have to correct something, then we'll do it. But that's the only way to move faster, to move fast.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that, it's turning something bad into an opportunity here in Latin America.
Mm-hmm. I really like that a sentence when you say turn it into an opportunity, in the sense that there should be also, for instance, different levels of integration, whether vertically and also horizontally. Because when you talk about, for instance, the vision among different levels of governments, whether from national, also regional, and also local level, I think only when it's aligned, then we can transition towards a sustainable urban freight future. So thank you very much, Sergio. And then I'm gonna hand over to our next speaker, Dr. Lita Lu. He is the Director General of the Environmental Protection Department of Taoyuan City. So before joining the Taoyuan City government in 2019, Dr. Lu also had been a professor at the National Taiwan University, among other positions in academia. So Dr. Lu has also been a senior environmental journalist at China Times for 21 years, and he has won the National Golden Tripod Award Outstanding Journalist Award. We are very happy to have you here, Dr. Lu. Now you can share your presentation.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure and honor to share how Taoyuan City enabled to the concept of the EcoLogistics in Daxi, one of the earliest developed area in Taoyuan. And I will also demonstrate with Taoyuan has done to involve many different stakeholders with a focus on last mile logistics. Next. With the 8th busiest airport worldwide by international freight traffic and the diversity of industrial cluster, Taoyuan is the good base for logistic operators to support the flow of the projects. Taoyuan is home to 1,800 logistic companies, accounting for 80% of total logistic companies in this country. However, many negative influences of the logistics have also been recognized. In order to accelerate a transition towards sustainability in the logistics system, Taoyuan City officially signed a deal with the EcoLogistics to become the chair city for the EcoLogistics community in the beginning of this year. We set up a community chair office and strengthened the partnership with external institutions. And Taoyuan established 5 demonstration sites, which has different characteristics of its own. Daxi is one of the earliest developed areas in the Taoyuan. Our demonstration site is located in the heart of Old Town, where many of the existing buildings keep Baroque style facade and classic wooden features. Daxi cultural heritage assets draw large crowds of people on weekends. However, the alleyways in this demonstration site, which is often no more than a few feet wide, can hardly handle the current movement of people. Neither the transportation of goods, freight vehicle follow reduced road capacity and the contribution to congestion. In order to solve certain problems related to the road capacity, we had more than 30 meetings and invite many stakeholders, for example, local business, opinion leaders, residents, logistical companies, technology development units, relevant bureaus, and so on. We found reducing the negative impact of freight vehicle on local environment are the primary task. As mentioned, Daxi Old Town and its alleyways are too narrow to accommodate larger freight vehicles. It is also possible for the larger freight vehicle to run into the sign by the storefront as they drive by. Freight vehicle can easily result in congestions when parked to make collection or deliveries, not to mention that the emission and the noise from the freight vehicle worsen the situation. After careful consideration, we propose to set a low emission consolidation zone and a quiet zone, and this proposal are supported by the local people. And due to the limited scope of Daxi demo site, we plan to transform the existing parking area into a low emission transfer zone with a consolidation station. The consolidation station function by first allow logistic operator to drive in, park, and unload the goods. And then the logistic operator required to use low carbon vehicle for deliveries. In order to reduce the impact of freight trucks on the surrounding area, we have only one entry and one exit to track the route. Vehicle access restriction also enforced without a pass or a delivery note. It is not allowed to enter this area. And the low emission freight zone with a transfer station and funded by the Taoyuan city government and run by a local environment-friendly NGO. This low emission freight zone is provided with truck parking space only for logistical operators. There are storage space and the solar canopies in the area. The low emission vehicle for transfer include electric scooter, electric tricycle, and the smart follow the vehicle. By doing so, we hope to solve the noise and the security problem. The traffic quiet zone around Daxi downtown will appear in this way shown in the slide. Vehicle speed restriction and related traffic control, including honking bounds and noise reduction, will be implemented. We will, in addition, plan the routes, the pedestrian and the cars respectively to improve the working environment for people in Daxi. By setting a low emission freight zone with a transfer station and a traffic calming zone, we hope listen and the problem related to emission, congestion, noise, and the risk of road crashes if electric vehicles are used for delivery the old downtown. The carbon emission from transportation can be effectively reduced, and at the same time, traffic congestions caused by temporary or illegal parking of the truck can be avoided. By this precision change, I would like to share with you an important information. Taoyuan are going to hold a big international event to share our achievement as the chair city for the ecological community. In the coming year, I hope to see everyone again in Taoyuan to experience Taoyuan sustainable results. Here comes the end of my briefing. I hope the case of the Daxi can inspire more international communities, and together we come up with more effective solutions and policies for a brighter and more sustainable future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lu, and also for your wonderful presentation. We also learned so much about Taoyuan's initiatives and also the pilot projects that are currently implemented under the EcoLogistics community project. And actually, I think the previous speakers, Robert and Sergio, also touched upon about the element of stakeholder engagement already. And actually also want to ask you, for instance, like, we know that in managing the urban freight, it's critical to get the stakeholders, which would involve, for instance, city officials and private companies and also residents. So with this in mind, can you also probably give us some examples of how to work with the private sector and how to encourage or incentivize their participation based on your previous experience in working with under the several pilot projects in Taoyuan?
Thank you. As I shared in my presentation in Daxi Business G3, the stakeholders involved in this project are highly diverse, including local business, opinion leaders, residents, logistical companies, technology development units, relevant bureaus, and so on. In order to meet the needs of the broad user group, we have held at least 30 meetings with the stakeholders. Eventually, we propose a low emission freight zone with a consolidation station and a traffic quiet zone communicate with local and with support of local things. We value the opinions. We value opinions from the private sector. We will keep communicating with local stakeholders in this process of implementing EcoLogistics with full passions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lu. And also thank you to all speakers for your presentations. We are now going to begin to answering some questions submitted during today's presentation. And also as a reminder to all the audience, you can still submit and also upvote the questions through the questions panel. So our first question is addressed to Robin. So it's from Dewi Bakiti. And he asks, is the coordination principle for freight transport that apply in Stockholm can be implemented to a city that has very big population and many million users of motorcycle? Yeah, so could you share your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess you need to start from where you are and try to use existing forums, etc. And also, of course, the coordination of different stakeholders depends on what's the biggest challenge in your city. So if it's a very big city, you might need to look at different groups for interaction.
Yeah, great. I mean, I think Keith's question is also kind of related to, for instance, like an Indian city where there use motorcycles, two-wheelers, and three-wheelers for also as a format of freight transport mode. So I think this actually related to questions like how to include like informal transport sector into urban freight and also managing its relevant issues. Because I think when we were currently implementing the EcoLogistics project, I think that's also one of the issues that we are encountering, because there are also like so many informal vehicles that are running or plying on the street, and then it's hard to regulate them. Yeah, I think related to this, actually, I also want to address it to Sergio, because I think you previously also touched upon like whether for instance, in Bogota, you also try to incorporate the informal transport sector to your whole urban freight managing related, whether it can be regulations or policies, or I wonder if you can also share some experience from Bogota in managing the informal transport sector.
Yeah, so like I said, that has been a big challenge. It's still a big challenge for us because, you know, what we see when we work with the network of companies, of entities that I was mentioning, is that, you know, mid-size, big-size companies, they all, you know, already understood what it means to get cleaner vehicles, to do best practices. They understand that it's not only, you know, good for the environment, good for the city, but it's also a good business idea for them. But it's very difficult when you are the owner of one truck or of two trucks. And like I mentioned before, because we are the, you know, the economic hub of the country, if you are the owner of a small truck that lives on the other side of the country, you live on a farm, you live by transporting, I don't know, chickens or pigs, bringing them to a big city. You're totally disconnected from what's happening in the city. You probably only make enough to survive, you know, to retrofit continuously your really old truck. And it's absolutely impossible for them to consider, you know, going to a traditional bank loan or something like that to change their truck. They don't see the business model. They just, you know, it's difficult. And that's something that we're really trying to work on right now with the national government, because of course the national government has a different perspective, because, you know, they have to look at the whole country comprehensively and try to do the best that they can to optimize the flows and optimize productivity across all the countries. So they have a very different incentive for maybe providing funds, for maybe you know, providing discounted rates for loans or things like this. And that's why I was making a strong case for how important it was when we signed that agreement with the national government. Because what happens is that from, I don't know, at least 10 years ago, they started developing programs for helping, the small truck owner. But a lot of times, it wasn't only that the idea was good or maybe it could be better, but it has so many layers, so many requirements, so many different steps that they have to make. The small guy who lives on the other side of the country, that it was very unattractive for them. It was very time conscious. They have to, traverse the country, stay here, I don't know, 1 week going from one office to the next and bring me a photocopy of this paper, a lot of bureaucracy. And so we've been trying to the government, the national government, to try to optimize that. And at the same time, when the pandemic came, and of course, this great economic crisis started unfolding as well, the city took on a different role, a role that has really never taken before. And it was like protecting the most vulnerable, even giving them money. City government actually went and bought groceries for the most vulnerable of our inhabitants. And right now, actually, I believe it's today, that City Council is starting discussion of a big, it was called like a Marshall Plan to resemble what happens after World War II, to trying to really kickstart the economy again. And there's a lot of proposals, of course, low interest rates or loan forgiveness for many different types of things. And what we're trying to do is to try to incorporate this single owner of a small, really old truck into some sort of program within that big umbrella that the city is trying to push for kickstart the economy. So we'll see how that goes at City Council. We hope that we can manage something, but at the same time, we continue pushing the national government to try to streamline the process and to really put more money into it, so that, we can actually have an impact across the country.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sergio, for your answer. I think it's really also informative, and also it's very insightful. So as we are a little bit running out of time, I on our audience, and it can be addressed to our all panelists. So the audience Mark asks, to all panelists, have you come up with any purchase incentive plans for smaller transport companies to upgrade their vehicles? If so, how is it going? I might want to start with Robin, and then we'll continue with Sergio, and then Dr. Lu probably.
So I guess within the city, we're mainly the most vehicle regulations and bonus systems, etc., are established on a national level in Sweden. But what we do at the city is that we use environmental zones so that only clean vehicles can enter certain areas to fulfill air quality limits. And also, of course, we can use the tool of public procurement by showing as the city is a very large organization with hosting all the schools, for example, and homes for the elderly, etc. So when we procure food and all the transport, we can include those demands for clean vehicles, so that helping the market going forward.
Great, thank you. How about Sergio?
Hi, sorry, I had my internet freeze for a little bit, so I didn't hear the question well. Attendee asked, have you, in your city, have you come up with any purchase incentive plans for smaller transport companies to upgrade their vehicles? And if so, how is it going? I mean, I know that in Bogota, actually, you have some support program to scrap the old vehicles and also to renew their vehicle fleet. And I think the audience, the attendee, I think he wants to also understand how is the incentive actually for the smaller transport companies. Probably you can share also a little bit. Yeah, so that's exactly what I was talking about in the previous question, that program in which, the government gives you some money, gives you some special lines of credit so that they can go and change the truck. And then of course you need to fulfill some requirements, like you need to take your old truck to a certain scrapping place, and you need to have a certificate that, you know, you're not getting the money on one side and selling your old truck to somebody else. And that's the process that I was talking about before, that sometimes it has been complicated. A lot of requirements that are not easy to fulfill, especially for people that don't live in the city and that need to spend a lot of time here waiting for that. And those are the things that we're trying to kickstart and create, not only improve that process, but also to create new lines of credit in the, you know, umbrella that we're going through right now to try to kickstart the economy because of the COVID. That's exactly what we're trying to do. And if you remember, I also mentioned a cargo bike pilot. So that's also something that we're trying to really push to see, you know, how that works, how the metrics develop here in the city, to see if maybe we can also develop some sort of incentive for the smaller businesses, you know, the neighborhood stores or things like that, that can, you know, jump into that electric cargo bike and really help us with the last mile distribution. So, but that's something that we're probably going to be talking about next year.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sergio. And I wonder also, Dr. Lu, I know that you also touch upon this point also in your presentation about the purchase of like electric also motorcycles, etc. I wonder also if Taoyuan City has also any incentive plans for like smaller transport companies in terms of the uptake of low emission vehicles or clean vehicles. Dr. Lu?
Yeah, the low emission price zone with the transportation is funded by Taoyuan City government. And the low emission vehicle for transport include electric scooter and electric tricycle and the smart follow me vehicle. And other, we take the incentive to the encourage the my citizen to encourage the incentive.
And sorry, we're gonna talk about translator from right now. So actually in Taoyuan, we also have some incentives and substitutes for the shift of the vehicles from motorcycle and motor engine cycles, motorcycles, and also freight trucks. They also, for instance, half of the subsidies will put on the electric motorcycles, and one fifth subsidy will given to the electric trucks to try to help the small business owners to shift their vehicles into cleaner and low carbon vehicles.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. So as we are running a little bit out of time, just to conclude, we know that as I think touched upon by 3 panelists already, like stakeholder engagements is absolutely important in delivering sustainable urban freight solutions, and it's also important for different levels of governments to align their visions and work together to move towards sustainable freight future. So with that in mind, I would like to thank Robin, Sergio, and also Dr. Lu for sharing your experiences, and also and to all the participants for attending and also engaging with us in the discussions. And then I would also encourage you to join our next webinars, which will be happening tomorrow at 3:30, and it will also be featuring the launch of the EcoLogistics principles, and you will also have a great panel with the City of Portland, San Francisco, and also Germany. So on top of that, there are also a few other sessions happening throughout the week at different cities, and I will also encourage you to stay tuned and participate. And last but not least, you're also invited to participate in the African Mobility Month social media campaign, and you can also find more on their website. So with that in mind, thank you all for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you all.